the Whispering Pines Motel. The rain fell in heavy sheets, shrouding the lonely stretch of highway in an impenetrable curtain of water. The headlights of Jake's old Ford pickup cut through the darkness, slicing through the raindrops like shards of glass. He had been driving for hours, the monotonous drumming of rain on the roof lulling him into a trance-like state. He needed a place to rest, a place to escape the relentless storm. As if summoned by his thoughts, a neon sign appeared in the distance, flickering weakly through the deluge. It read, "The Whispering Pines Motel." The word seemed to materialize from the night, like a ghostly apparition. Jake squinted through the rain-smeared windshield and pulled into the motel's gravel lot. The Whispering Pines Motel was a relic from a bygone era, a sprawling structure of weathered wood and peeling paint. The sign above the entrance promised vacancies, but Jake couldn't see any other cars in the lot. A shiver ran down his spine as he cut the engine. The rain pelted the roof with renewed fury, drowning out all other sounds. He stepped out of the truck, his boots sinking into the soggy gravel. The air was thick with the scent of wet earth and decay. Water streamed from the eaves of the motel's sagging roof, creating a curtain of droplets that shimmered in the pale glow of the flickering sign. Jake pushed through the creaking door and entered the dimly lit lobby. The air inside was heavy and musty, like the breath of a tomb. The room was dominated by an ancient wooden counter, behind which stood a hunched figure with sunken eyes. The motel's proprietor, Jake assumed. "Can I help you?" The figure croaked, a voice like dry leaves rustling. "I need a room for the night," Jake replied, trying to keep his unease in check. The proprietor nodded slowly and produced a rusted key from beneath the counter. "Room 13, he said, his voice a whisper that seemed to linger in the air long after the words had been spoken. Jake accepted the key, the metal cold and clammy in his hand. He ventured down a long, narrow corridor, the faded wallpaper peeling like dead skin. The doors to the other rooms were all closed, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, that unseen eyes were peering out at him from the darkness. Room 13 was at the end of the hall, its door slightly ajar. He pushed it open, revealing a dimly lit chamber. The rain beat against the window, creating a rhythm that seemed to echo the pounding of his heart. The room was Spartan, with a lumpy mattress, a rickety chair, and a cracked mirror that reflected a pale, weary face. Jake tried to shake off his unease as he unpacked his bag, but the room seemed to press in on him, suffocating him with its oppressive atmosphere. He turned on the TV, hoping to drown out the eerie silence, but the screen flickered with static, casting ghostly shadows on the walls. Unable to shake the feeling of being watched, he decided to take a shower. The bathroom was cramped and dimly lit, the tiles cracked and stained. As he stood under the lukewarm water, he thought he heard a faint whispering, like voices carried on the wind. He dismissed it as a trick of his imagination, but the feeling of unease only deepened. When he emerged from the bathroom, he froze in his tracks. The room had changed. The once dim light was now blindingly bright, and the walls seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. The furniture had vanished, leaving only the mirror, which now reflected not his own face but a shadowy figure lurking behind him. Heart pounding, he turned to confront the intruder, but there was no one there. The room had returned to its dismal state, the mirror showing only his own reflection. He couldn't explain it, but he knew he was not alone. As the night wore on, the room seemed to come alive with strange, unsettling noises. Whispers echoed through the walls, like the murmurs of the dead. The rain outside had ceased, but the room grew colder with each passing moment. Jake pulled the thin blanket tight around him, his breath visible in the frigid air. Just when he thought he couldn't bear it any longer, the mirror began to shimmer. Images flickered across its surface, scenes of unspeakable horror and suffering. A ghastly figure emerged from the glass, its eyes empty voids that seemed to suck the light from the room. Jake stumbled back, terror clutching at his throat. The figure advanced, its movements jerky and unnatural. It reached out with spectral fingers, and as it touched him, a searing pain tore through his chest. In that final moment of agony, Jake realized the truth. The Whispering Pines Motel was not a place of refuge but a trap, a gateway to a realm of darkness and despair. As his vision faded, he heard the whispers grow louder, a chorus of voices that echoed through the empty corridors of the motel, promising torment and eternal suffering. And then, with a final, agonized scream, Jake was gone, his soul claimed by the malevolent force that dwelled within the Whispering Pines Motel. The rain continued to fall, a relentless downpour that washed away all evidence of his existence, leaving behind only an empty room and the faint, haunting echoes of his screams. Days turned into weeks, and the Whispering Pines Motel remained a dark and forbidding place. No guests arrived, and the rain that had trapped Jake inside the cursed room continued to fall, as if it were mourning his fate. The motel's neon sign, once flickering weakly, now glowed with a sinister intensity, beckoning unwary travelers toward their doom. The motel's proprietor, a wretched soul trapped in the same eternal nightmare as Jake, continued to haunt the lobby. His eyes, now devoid of any hint of humanity, bore witness to the horrors that unfolded within the motel's walls. One stormy night, a lone traveler named Sarah, desperate to escape the pounding rain, stumbled upon the Whispering Pines Motel. She had been driving for hours, her gas tank running on fumes, and the storm had left her disoriented. The motel seemed like a lifeline in the tempest, a place of shelter and respite. The proprietor emerged from the shadows, his skeletal hand extending a rusty key. "Room 13, he rasped, his voice a hollow echo of what it once was. Sarah accepted the key, her fingers trembling. She made her way down the same narrow corridor that had trapped Jake, the faint sound of whispers growing louder with each step. Room 13's door was slightly ajar, just as it had been for Jake. Inside, the room was as desolate and foreboding as ever. Sarah's unease deepened as she unpacked her bag, the room's oppressive atmosphere closing in on her. She glanced at the mirror but quickly averted her gaze when she saw her own reflection staring back at her with hollow eyes. As the night wore on, the room seemed to come alive once more. Whispers drifted through the walls, voices filled with pain and sorrow. Sarah's heart raced as she pulled the thin blanket tightly around her, her breath visible in the frigid air. And then, just as it had for Jake, the mirror began to shimmer. Terrifying images danced across its surface, each more horrifying than the last. Sarah's blood turned to ice as the ghastly figure emerged from the glass, its empty eyes fixed on her. Terror paralyzed her as the figure drew closer, its bony fingers reaching out toward her. Sarah had nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The room became a maelstrom of malevolent energy, and as the figure touched her, the same searing pain that had consumed Jake coursed through her veins. But Sarah was no ordinary traveler. She fought back with every ounce of her being, resisting the dark force that sought to claim her soul. She screamed, a defiant cry that pierced the night and shattered the room's eerie silence. Outside, the rain ceased, and a sudden burst of moonlight broke through the storm clouds, casting a beam of silvery light into the room. The figure recoiled, its spectral form dissipating like smoke. Sarah's strength had won her a reprieve. With newfound determination, she fled from the room and out into the corridor, leaving the sinister motel behind. The proprietor, watching from the lobby, let out a mournful sigh as she escaped his clutches. As Sarah drove away from the Whispering Pines Motel, the neon sign faded into the distance. She knew that the motel would continue to haunt her nightmares, but she also knew that she had escaped its grip, at least for now. The rain had finally stopped, and the storm had passed, leaving only the memory of her harrowing ordeal. But the motel, with its cursed room and malevolent force, remained, waiting for the next unwitting traveler to stumble upon its dark secrets, ready to claim another soul in its never-ending nightmare. Sarah had narrowly escaped the clutches of the Whispering Pines Motel, but the horrors she had witnessed and the pain she had endured haunted her every waking moment. She couldn't shake the feeling that the motel's malevolent presence still lingered in the shadows, waiting for an opportunity to strike again. Determined to uncover the truth behind the cursed motel, Sarah delved into the motel's dark history. She scoured newspapers, interviewed locals, and unearthed old documents, piecing together a chilling narrative that spanned decades. It turned out that the Whispering Pines Motel had a sordid past, one steeped in darkness and despair. Decades ago, it had been a haven for travelers, a place of rest and respite. But all that changed when a series of gruesome murders occurred within its walls. The motel's proprietor, a man named Samuel Blackwood, had descended into madness, driven by a malevolent force that had taken root in the very heart of the motel. Sarah's research revealed a pattern to the killings. Each victim had been drawn to room 13 during a storm, just as she and Jake had been. The malevolent force that dwelled within the motel had claimed their souls, trapping them in an eternal nightmare. Determined to break the curse and put an end to the motel's reign of terror, Sarah returned to the Whispering Pines Motel. The neon sign still flickered with its eerie glow, but she felt a newfound strength and resolve. Armed with knowledge and a determination to confront the malevolent force, she entered the lobby once more. The proprietor, his eyes still vacant, watched her approach. "You again," he croaked. Sarah met his gaze with steely determination. "I know what you are, and I know what you've done. You won't claim any more souls." With those words, she reached beneath the counter and retrieved a small, weathered book. It was a journal, written by Samuel Blackwood himself, a record of the dark rituals he had performed in a desperate attempt to gain power over the malevolent force. As she began to read the incantations and invocations from the journal, the very air in the lobby seemed to grow heavy with malevolence. The motel itself fought back, unleashing a barrage of supernatural forces to stop her. The walls shook, and the ceiling groaned, but Sarah pressed on, her determination unwavering. As the final incantation left her lips, the malevolent force within the motel let out a deafening scream, a chorus of tortured souls howling in agony. The walls of the lobby cracked, and the mirror shattered into 1,000 pieces, the ghastly figure within vanishing into the void. With a final, desperate burst of energy, the malevolent force lashed out one last time, but Sarah stood firm, a beacon of light in the darkness. The force dissipated, leaving behind only a lingering, mournful wail that echoed through the empty corridors. The Whispering Pines Motel, once a place of nightmares, was now a place of silence. The curse had been broken, and the malevolent force banished. Sarah had prevailed. Leaving the motel behind, Sarah drove away with a sense of closure and a newfound peace. The rain had finally ceased, and the storm had passed. As she looked back one last time at the dark silhouette of the motel in her rearview mirror, she knew that it was a place of terror no more. The Whispering Pines Motel had been defeated, its curse lifted, and the souls trapped within its walls finally set free. Sarah had faced the darkest of nightmares and emerged victorious, proving that even in the face of unspeakable evil, the human spirit could triumph.